Excellent partners who worked through this legislation. It does come over to you after having passed the House unanimously. House Bill 1214 has three main provisions. The first is to allow for the sealing of eviction filings in limited circumstances. For example, we know that even if a tenant pays their back rent prior to an eviction order being issued, that filing alone can remain on their records for years into the future, which affects their ability to find other places to live and contributes to housing instability. So this bill allows for eviction filings to be sealed in the following circumstances. First is when there is no action taken by the plaintiff within 180 days after the filing of the eviction or any subsequent actions. After that 180 days, the court informs the parties and then may dismiss the case and seal the records if no action is taken within 10 days of that notice. The tenant may also petition the court to dismiss the case and seal the records in this event. Second is when the case is dismissed by the court by petition of either party, and we do have a requirement that the landlord must file a dismissal if the case is resolved by the two parties prior to the eviction hearing. Third is when a judgment is entered in favor of the tenant, and fourth is when a judgment is entered against a tenant and then overturned or vacated upon appeal. So those are the only four circumstances where an eviction filing can be sealed. Once an eviction order is issued or a judgment is awarded, those records cannot be sealed. We do also allow for retroactive sealing of these filings, so tenants who have past filings on their records that meet these requirements for sealing can petition the court for that. We also have language requiring some record keeping and reporting in order to gather data on the number of eviction filings that are sealed, and also a section that requires eviction action information providers, who are third-party companies, to have updated information and remove filings from their databases if those filings are sealed. And this is very similar to the criminal expungement process with the reporting agencies. The second main piece of the bill is on page 6. This section states that any residential eviction diversion program or similar programs with different names must be voluntary for all parties and may only accept new participants in such a program while there is federal, state, or local rental assistance funding available. Further down on page 6 is the third key piece of the bill. This requires the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority or any other political subdivision who distributes federal rental assistance funding to create an application process for landlords by August 31st of this year. Up to this point, applications have only been accepted from tenants, and the vast majority of the funding has not been spent as a result. Opening this up to allow landlords to apply for rental assistance on behalf of their tenants will more effectively bring relief to those tenants and landlords who are struggling. I know we'll have another opportunity to discuss the bill next week when we have a finalized amendment, but happy to take any questions. We've had some new feedback just in the last 24 hours, so we want to make sure we get this right in order to avoid a conference committee in this very short session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thorough analysis, Representative Manning. And I neglected to mention that Senator Cook is carrying the bill in the Senate, and we are hearing this bill only today. We are not going to vote it. So there are 3 amendments that you may see, but we're not going to discuss them because there may be other amendments coming. So we're going to take a pause on that. However, with that, if the committee, we're losing them, and they know that's why they left, that we're not going to vote it. But we do have 6 people signed up to testify. So we'd like to move forward with that. Okay, great. First, we have Andrew Bradley with Prosperity Indiana and the Hoosier Housing Needs Coalition.
Thank you very much, Chair Brown and members of the committee. My name is Andrew Bradley. I'm Policy Director for Prosperity Indiana. We're the statewide association for community economic development. And I'm also speaking on behalf of the Hoosier Housing Needs Coalition, which has been working closely on issues of housing stability throughout the pandemic with steering committee members, including AARP Indiana, the Coalition for Homelessness Intervention and Prevention, or CHIP, the Indiana Community Action Poverty Institute, and United Way of Central Indiana, who all asked me to include them on this testimony. I really want to thank you for hearing this, want to thank Representative Manning for bringing this important issue, and thank the folks from the Indiana Apartment Association for elevating this key issue of eviction sealing and expungement. This is something that's come up through our organization, through this coalition I just described. We had a series of regional housing convenings over the summer that I know some of the legislators in this room participated in, and that eviction sealing and expungement was a top solution that really rose to the top to really kind of, it's low-hanging fruit, and really appreciate this group working on it, especially because it gets at the issue of what's called a Scarlet E, this eviction filing record that continues to follow people. And in the cases that Representative Manning mentioned, when the tenant's not at fault, that can still prevent them from being able to get into stable housing. So I've got just a couple of stats to back that up, try to move real quick. Even before the pandemic, according to Princeton University's Eviction Lab, Indiana saw an average of 31,767 evictions per year with an eviction rate of 4.07%, which is the highest among all Midwest states, and nearly twice the national rate of 2.34%. So that's actual evictions. Now, since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, March 2020, housing has been the top reason for calls to Indiana 211. There have been over 96,000 requests for housing assistance to Indiana 211. That's the top reason for calls and the top unmet need that network has seen, double the next highest unmet need. Also since March 15th, 2020, and this is back to that Eviction Lab, they have a weekly updated eviction tracking system if you look this up. So as of most recently, February 5th, Indiana has seen 84,886 evictions filed, and that's nearly twice the number of raw evictions filed of the next highest state tracked, which is Missouri at 44,000. So with 31% of Hoosiers who rent their homes, 794,000, that's more than 1 in 10 households has seen an eviction filed against them during the pandemic. So this bill really helps get at those 4 key categories that Representative Manning mentioned where the tenant is not at fault at all. We've seen those eviction filings increase throughout the pandemic, especially in some smaller and rural counties, but the largest raw numbers are in the larger and more urban counties. So also want to mention that this is not something that's behind us. According to the most recent analysis, there are 92,000 households, or 14% of all Hoosier renter households, that are currently behind on rent and at risk of eviction, with 111,000 children living in those households. So that's the future we're looking at. So by taking care of this Scarlet E, we're not only helping some of the people who slip through the cracks when it comes to pandemic housing assistance, but we're helping get ahead of that wave that's still in front of us. A few of the other folks that are going to talk to you today are going to bring up, there are still some lingering concerns. We want to make sure that we don't take away some tools that could be effective in terms of addressing pandemic housing instability. Something that is worth mentioning, that according to data from yesterday, as recent as yesterday, from the Indiana Supreme Court, the Indiana Landlord Tenant Settlement Conference Program, aka the Fast Track Facilitation Program, has seen 1,363 total requests for that settlement conference. 93.1% of those, though, have not been facilitated because either one party refused to participate, or there was no response, the request was too close to the hearing date, or the parties settled before the session. And only 5.4% of all those requests have actually ended up in a facilitation. That's 73 facilitations out of 1,363. However, of those 73 facilitations, 75% who participated came to some sort of agreement, where the tenant stays in the property, where there is no agreement, or excuse me, where there is an agreement to move out, and agreed to payment, et cetera. So again, if you get to that facilitation, 3 out of 4 times you're going to come to some kind of agreement. We want to make sure that we don't leave options on the table for both parties to come to some sort of agreement. And most importantly, we want to make sure that the benefits of all these assistance programs are available to any party.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you very much for your testimony. So next, thank you, Mr. Bradley. Next, we have Kathy Williams. Then I saw her. Oh, yes, representing Indiana Community Actions and Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence. On deck, we will have Randy Shelton and Stephanie Zhang with Hoosier Action. They're here.
Thank you, Chair Brown, members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of the 22 community action agencies across the state, which you may know provide services to lower-income Hoosiers, including low-income heating assistance, weatherization, and housing. And as you know, the Coalition Against Domestic Violence works to help and advocate for people who are fleeing domestic abuse. And so for the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the number one need of those people is housing, and of course, community action agencies deal with that continuously. So on behalf of both of those groups, we strongly support the core of this bill, which is to mandate eviction ceilings of the specified categories. And we thank the apartment owners for being on board with that. As a number of you know, we do have some concerns with the bill, and we very much appreciate Chair Brown, you holding this bill to work through some of those issues. Since you don't want to take testimony today on those issues, I won't take your time to do that. But we would very much appreciate the opportunity to help work through those.
I'm sure the authors in the House and Senate will be looking forward to hearing from you, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you
Any
so much.
questions? All right, thank you very much. So you can testify separately or together from Hoosier Action?
I will be testifying.
Okay, thank you. And then after Mr. Shelton, we will have Mr. Brandon Beeler and then Mr. Brian Spalding.
Thank you, Senator Brown, for hearing this bill and telling me and let me share my story to you today. Thank you for the committee members as well for being here today. My name is Randy Shelton. I'm a leader with Hoosier Action, and I'm a retired veteran from the Vietnam War. I live in Columbus for over 50 years. Today, I want to share the story of evictions and express my support for finding solutions in this HB1214. 5 years ago, I started losing my vision because of diabetes. I could no longer do my job because of my health, so I was forced to retire. The next year, my wife left me after 44 years of marriage and took everything with her. I was left alone, no job, no money, and in bad health, and I couldn't keep up with the rent. I felt hopeless and ashamed and had no place to go. I went to the property manager to explain my situation. He said because of their policy, he has to file for eviction. But if I turned over the keys to my apartment and moved out within 7 days, he said he would go back to the courthouse and remove the eviction filing off my record. So I did as he said, and I moved out immediately. But he never took the eviction filing off my record at the courthouse. It's still there today. I was homeless for 8 months. I slept on friends' couches and went to the homeless shelter. I was always fearful because I never knew where I was going to lay my head the next night. And since then, it has been nearly impossible to find a place to rent. No one wanted to rent to me because of the eviction filing on my record. The only reason I found another place to live was because of one of my friends who knew a landlord and put in a good word for me. And it would have been impossible to do it on my own. I know I'm not alone. There's thousands of Hoosiers having the eviction filings makes it impossible to find good, safe, quality housing. But all Hoosiers, no matter where they come from or what the color of their skin is, deserve a safe, stable, affordable place to call home. Committee members, I am joining others to testify today and to ask to continue to work on HB 1214 and to strengthen it. We need more pathways to keep a safe, stable roof over our heads. This is a positive step towards helping more people like me to find and keep our homes. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Shelton? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your testimony, by the way, Mr. Shelton. I'll
Thank
get to
you.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So,
Senator
Mr.
Randolph.
Shelton, your only issue, the biggest issue you have that you think is being satisfied is the expungement part
That's correct.
and everything, all right? And so you would like to save any money or expenses by being required to go to a court to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so you would like stronger penalties on the property owner, or this, what do you call this,
Property manager.
provider, if in fact he refuses to do the expungement within an acquired time. I think in the bill it talks about, what, 60 days?
60 days, I
Yeah,
believe it is,
right.
yes.
So you would like to be able to have a remedy if in fact that provider refuses to expunge your records?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Thank you for your question, Senator Randolph. Thank you very much. And so we have two more, Mr. Beeler, and then Mr. Spalding. You'll be the last. Thanks.